Introduction. Acting as if it all works out. There is a quiet force in the universe, ancient, unseen, and beyond measure, that shapes reality not through power, but through belief. Imagine beginning each morning not as a victim of circumstance, but as the author of your life. You rise not asking what will go wrong, but declaring, everything is working in my favor. Some might call this unrealistic, but consider, what if trust in the unseen is not foolishness, but wisdom? To act as if everything always works out is not arrogance or ignorance. It is a grounded stance, a reclaiming of your role as a co-creator. With life, today we explore this not as fantasy, but as a practical philosophy, one that can transform reality from within. I'll share 5 truths to help you live this way, not someday, but now. Perception shapes reality. You see the world. As you are, you do not see the world as it is. You see it as you are. This principle, ancient yet enduring, influences every interpretation, assumption, and inner story you carry. Perception is not passive. It actively shapes reality. The outer world bends to match your inner state. Acting as if everything works out is not blind pretending. It is choosing a lens that empowers you and reshapes how you experience life. There is an alchemy in perception. Believe the world is against you, and your mind collects proof of betrayal, rejection, and loss. Your nervous system reacts defensively, your posture closes, and you sharpen yourself not for creation, but for protection. You become your own prophecy. But if you truly believe the universe is an ally, a co-creator, not an adversary, your entire stance changes. You prepare not for pain, but for purpose. You notice opportunities, welcome subtle signals, and uncover possibilities hidden behind chaos. Modern psychology supports this timeless truth. In a Stanford study, participants were divided into 2 groups solving the same puzzles. One group was told the puzzles measured intelligence. The other was told simply to play. The outcomes were striking. Those under pressure performed worse. Slower, less creative, more rigid. Those who approached it as play performed better. Why? Because perception shaped their emotional state, which in turn shaped their capacity. One group saw a test, the other saw a playground. The world shifted because they did. This power is in us daily. We just forget. I once spoke with a woman convinced she was cursed with bad luck. Every missed bus, every breakup, reinforced her story of a cruel, unchangeable life. Why does this always happen to me? She'd ask. But I invited her to consider another view. What if life wasn't punishing her, but teaching her? What if delays were redirections, losses were initiations, and failures were invitations? To grow, she didn't transform overnight, but she allowed a new perspective to take root. Slowly, her world shifted, not because life became easier, but because she saw meaning where she once saw randomness. 2 years later, she stood secure in a career she loved and married to a partner who valued her wholeness. It wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It was vision. She changed her perception and her world followed. To act as if everything always works out does not mean denying hardship. It means interpreting hardship differently. Enter a storm expecting defeat, and you fall at the first gust. Enter the same storm knowing it will forge strength, and you emerge wiser and stronger. This is not wishful thinking, but a powerful psychological stance. It directs your inner compass to seek order in chaos, shifts your focus from obstacles to options, and aligns your emotions to attract opportunities, solutions, and people who match that belief. The truth is, life rarely gives us certainty, but it always offers us the choice of how we respond. When you choose to believe that everything is guiding your growth, even without seeing the full picture, you become an active participant in shaping your destiny. The canvas of life remains unchanged, but its colors, textures, and form begin to align with your vision. So imagine choosing today to view the world not through fear, but through possibility. Imagine every setback as a hidden alignment, every delay as a divine adjustment, and every fall as an invitation to rise higher than before. The future you experience depends entirely on the story you choose to believe today. Within each of us lies an inner stage, a symbolic theater where many voices dwell. These are not fantasies, but real psychological forces. The wounded child longing for safety, the skeptic who doubts, the healer seeking to restore, the fool who embraces joy, and the hero who dares to act. These inner figures influence our choices, behaviors, and direction. When you act as if life is on your side, you are not pretending, you are invoking the hero. A hero is not free from fear or hardship. They emerge through difficulty, taking the first step even when the path is unclear. They know pain and loss, yet also trust that beyond suffering lies something worth pursuing. To live with trust, even in uncertainty, is to embody this spirit. Myths across cultures reflect this truth. The hero rarely begins strong. They begin in ordinary or even broken circumstances until the rupture arrives, the loss, the failure, the trial that changes everything. At that point they must choose to fall into victimhood or to rise with the faith that struggle can lead to transformation. The darkness they enter may represent heartbreak, illness, rejection, or loss. But choosing to act as though life works in your favor means stepping forward with trust instead of fear. A victim mindset traps the mind in cycles of blame and helplessness, asking, "Why me?" with despair. The hero reframes it. "What is this teaching me?" Suddenly, suffering holds meaning, and challenges become preparation. I once knew a man who was laid off after decades in a career he thought was permanent. At first, he felt betrayed, abandoned by life, but eventually he asked, "What if this is release, not rejection?" That shift changed everything. He began to learn, to explore, to dream. Within 2 years, he had built his own consulting business, serving causes he deeply cared about. The layoff hadn't destroyed him, it had redirected him. And in doing so, it awakened his inner hero. Becoming the hero doesn't erase pain or grief. It transforms them, turning scars into strength. The hero within us isn't born through victory, but through endurance. It speaks not with certainty, but with courage. It asks us to keep showing up again and again, trusting that life is not a battlefield, but a crucible. A place where the fire burns away illusion and reveals who we truly are. This inner stance changes everything. It doesn't stop life's storms, but it gives us the wings to fly through them. It also influences how others see us. People are naturally drawn to those who embody the energy of the hero, those who act with integrity, faith, and quiet strength, even in chaos. Because in their presence, we are reminded of the possibilities within ourselves. To act as though everything always works out for you is to step into authorship. It means rejecting the passive script written by fear and choosing to write your own. This doesn't ignore struggle, it gives it purpose. The hero inside you is not waiting for perfection, only for choice. And when you choose, when you declare, "This too is part of my becoming," you stop merely surviving your story, you begin creating it. A persistent illusion tells us we must first feel ready, confident, or certain before we act. But this belief prevents more dreams than failure ever could. Many wait endlessly for fear to disappear, for clarity to arrive, for permission from a cautious mind that rarely grants it. Yet the psyche is not a passive observer. It is an evolving field that responds most powerfully to action. Acting as if everything works out is not pretending. It is inviting the psyche to rise to meet your choice. It says, "Even if I don't yet believe it, I will move as though it were true." The psyche listens, aligning with your posture, tone, and focus. The unconscious does not respond to debate. It responds to embodiment. This is not shallow imitation. It is not performance to impress others. It is a deeper practice, a sacred form of becoming. To act before confidence arrives, to speak before certainty appears, to step forward before you feel worthy is not lying. It is awakening what has always been within you. Modern psychology supports this truth. At Harvard, researchers found that holding a power pose, open chest, lifted chin, broad stance, for just 2 minutes shifted hormone levels. Testosterone linked to confidence rose. Cortisol tied to stress dropped. Most importantly, participants became more willing to take risks. Their bodies signaled strength and the brain adjusted. This was not magic, but biology aligning with belief. The way you walk, stand, and even say your name communicates directly to your unconscious. When you act with dignity and carry yourself as though life is reliable, your psyche accepts that story as truth. So dress as someone who expects good from life, not from vanity but from self-respect. Speak with steadiness, even if your hands tremble. Move with quiet assurance, trusting life's rhythm even when the path ahead is unclear. These are not surface-level habits, but rituals that speak to the deeper self. It is time. We are not waiting anymore. Most people wait for fear to leave before they act, yet often fear only fades because they acted. Confidence is not the starting point, it is the result. It appears in the moment you move forward despite trembling knees, in the instant you speak before the perfect words arrive. Action is where belief is born. In myth and in life, transformation begins not with readiness, but with a step. When you act in line with the future you desire, you dissolve the past holding you back. You shift from idea into reality. And the world responds. People sense your presence, circumstances shift, opportunities open, not always instantly, not always clearly, but consistently. The outer world begins reflecting your inner change. This is not manipulation. It is resonance. When you move toward wholeness, the path that once seemed hidden appears beneath your feet. The mind will always invent reasons to wait, but the soul does not seek delay. It seeks movement, showing up, and aligning the unseen. World within with the visible world outside. Action over thought. How the mind follows the body. When you act as though life always works in your favor, your mind begins to listen. Over time, it accepts this belief, and once it believes, it no longer waits for proof. A quiet strength appears, not when we cling, but when we release. Most people live with tight control, holding on to outcomes, timelines, and expectations shaped by fear rather than trust. Yet control, for all its appearance, is often fear disguised. The paradox is clear. The more you try to control life, the more it resists you. Insistence creates pressure, and from that pressure, anxiety is born. Not because life is against you, but because you think it all depends on you. Acting as if everything works out is not withdrawal or passivity. It is the opposite. It means showing up fully, giving generously, speaking, creating, risking, and then letting go of the results. Not because results don't matter, but because you know they are not yours alone to command. You are a co-creator in something vast. You are not the only hand at work. This letting go is not indifference, it is trust. It allows the mind to rest, the heart to open, and the soul to breathe. It says, I will give my best, but I will not tie my peace or worth to the outcome. It whispers, there is more at work here than I can see. Think of the farmer. He does not demand the seed to grow on his schedule. He does not dig it up in worry to check its progress. He does not shout at the sky for rain. He tills the soil, plants the seed, waters with care, and then waits. He trusts the unseen process. He cannot see the roots forming, but he knows they are there. His trust is not built on guarantees, but on the rhythm of life he has witnessed through seasons, storms, and harvests. This is how we are meant to live, not as controllers of fate, but as participants in a greater order. When you act as if all will work out, you release the white-knuckled grip on control. You stop chasing certainty and instead find peace in trust. Trust is not abstract, it is a practice, a repeated choice to let go of what is beyond your reach. Many believe that constant worry can prevent disaster, that anticipating every outcome and rehearsing every possibility will bend life to their will. But this is illusion. Life is not a machine to control, but a mystery to experience. The root of anxiety is this illusion, that you must carry it all, fix it all, manage it all. The truth is simpler and freeing. You were never meant to do it alone. You are part of something greater, vast and interconnected. Your task is not to manage every detail, but to give yourself sincerely and then trust the unfolding. There is strength in detachment. By letting go of rigid expectations, you make room for possibilities beyond what you imagined. You stop forcing and begin allowing. You stop surviving and begin flowing. And often, in surrender, you realize the outcomes you once clung to were smaller than what life had planned for you. So live like the farmer. Work with care. Invest your energy where it matters and then release. Let the soil do its work. Let the rain come in its time. Let life move in its rhythm. This is not weakness, but wisdom. Peace is not found by winning every battle, but by knowing which battles are yours and which are not. When you act as if all things align in your favor, you step into this wisdom. You remember you are not struggling alone, but moving in rhythm with something greater. In this alignment, you discover not just peace, but power. Not the power of control, but the power of trust. There is an invisible thread running through reality, subtle yet undeniable. It responds not only to what you do or say, but to what you believe. It is not just a mantra repeated in quiet moments. It is deeper, older, and more instinctive. It is the subtle expectation beneath your actions, the energy you radiate before you even speak. This belief, carried not only in the mind, but in the very core of your being, shapes how the world responds to you. When you live as if everything consistently works in your favor, you are not forcing life to bend to your will. You are aligning with a different truth. You no longer present yourself as someone seeking approval, but as someone who already belongs. You enter a room not hoping to be chosen, but embodying the sense that life has already chosen you. Though subtle on the surface, this shift resonates powerfully at a deeper level, influencing people and opportunities to respond. Letting go to receive. The power of detachment. There is an old saying that doors open for those who knock. What is rarely mentioned is that how you knock matters. A hesitant knock filled with self-doubt may go unheard. A confident knock that says, "I am ready," carries a different energy, and the world responds to that frequency. I once mentored a young man who struggled with this. He had intelligence, talent, and experience, yet he doubted his own worth. Each job interview he attended was overshadowed by that quiet sense of inadequacy, and though interviewers couldn't explain why, they felt it and rejected him time and again. He thought it was fate or bad luck, but in reality, he was shutting the door himself. I encouraged him to try a new approach. Don't enter seeking their approval, but as if you already belong there. Treat the interview not as a test, but as a chance to connect and discover. Though skeptical, he agreed to try. The next interview, he changed nothing about his resume or skills, only his posture. He smiled more, listened attentively, and most importantly, carried the belief even briefly that he was worthy. He was hired immediately. This was not magic. It was belief. He removed the resistance within himself, stopped projecting rejection, and allowed opportunities to meet him. He didn't manipulate life. He met it openly, and life responded. When you live as though everything will work out, you create space for life to confirm it. You send a message without words. I am open to good things. I trust the process. I welcome support. When your actions align with your inner state, life flows more freely toward you. The barriers fall away, and others sense it too. People are naturally drawn to those who embody quiet confidence, not arrogance, but calm assurance. It feels steady, safe, and familiar, as if it awakens something within them as well. When you recognize your worth, you become a mirror that reflects possibility for others. Belief spreads not through words, but through presence. The world does not ask for your perfection, it asks for your participation. It doesn't require flawless performance, but authentic conviction. That conviction is permission, for opportunities to arise, for help to appear, for love to grow. Once you grant yourself that permission, the world begins to align differently. This doesn't mean life will always be easy, but it does mean you will move in harmony with it. You'll notice clarity, unexpected support, and open doors where once there were only barriers. Not because life suddenly shifted, but because you did. You stopped waiting for a sign and became one. You stopped proving your worth and began living it. So act as if everything always works out for you, not to deceive, but to awaken, not to manipulate, but to trust. The belief you hold is never invisible. It radiates outward and shapes the reality around you. When you believe deeply, you don't just change your story. You change the environment in which that story unfolds. You can move through life as though everything is against you, or you can walk as though the wind is at your back. Not because it always will be, but because the belief itself alters your path. Your stance becomes a prophecy, your presence a magnet, your faith a quiet force that shapes reality. Act as though everything already works out for you, not someday, but now. And watch as the world rises to meet you.